Arianna Huffington was well known before she started the Huffington Post, but now she's sort of got the mantle of one of the most successful startup online news, commentary, analysis, blog platform, you name it. The Huffington Post has become something of a phenomenon, as is its founder and namesake, Arianna Huffington. Please join me in welcoming Arianna to the stage. Welcome. Over here.
I thought it was going to be Zorba the Greek or Never on Sunday.
Oh, I try not to, well, sometimes I try to, but not this time. So let's start, if you don't mind, and if you have them top of mind, with some metrics. I asked Dick Costello this morning the same question. I asked Tim the same question. Tell me how the Huffington Post has grown over the past year or year or two, from where it came from to where it is now, in terms of maybe uniques or page views or both?
Well, as you know, with uniques, it depends on what you look at. If you look at the Google Analytics that we use, we're over 40 million. If you look at ComScore, we're about 23 million. Greg Coleman, our president and Chief Revenue Officer, is sitting in the front row, so he can correct me. And what is fascinating for us is that after the election, there's a little bit of a concern that our traffic would drop, and the exact opposite happened.
This is after the 2008 presidential election.
Yeah. And the reason for that is, I think, twofold. One is that the Huffington Post now gets 3/4 of its traffic not from politics. We have 20 sections beyond politics. So when we call ourselves the internet newspaper, we're really living up to that. And this year alone, we launched College, which has been a huge success, bringing together communities from over 80 colleges, both students, academics.
And how are you doing content for that?
We are getting content both from students, from student newspapers that we've made partnerships with, from academics. It's just kind of an amazing source for great content.
Are you paying those folks?
No.
Why would you do that?
We now have about 130 people on staff. We obviously pay all our editors, our reporters.
Right.
We launched the Huffington Post Investigative Fund, which is a not-for-profit, for-profit operation that produces more in-depth pieces. And we have about 6,000 bloggers who write for the Huffington Post whenever they have something to say that they want a big platform for.
This is one of the things that I find really kind of extraordinary about the Huffington Post, which is that somehow you have managed to compel a lot of very well-known people, whether they're well-known publicly as public figures or well-known in a specific, industry or segment of the world, to see the Huffington Post as the place where they sound off. And they don't expect anything in return other than having that platform. And has this been central to your success, do you think?
Yes, but let's not be as surprised as you're sounding about it, for the following reasons. First of all, because traditionally, many well-known people have sent op-eds to the New York Times, not because they were going to get $150 or $200, but because they wanted to sound off, as you said, on something that was important to them. Now, they can also do it on the Huffington Post. It's very convenient. We guarantee a civil environment. From day one, our comments were moderated, both by technology, but as all of you here know, technology hasn't reached the point where you don't need human moderation, and human pre-moderation. We now have 2.5 million comments, and part of the reason for this growth has been the civil environment that we have guaranteed.
Now, how many comments do you get on a day or a week? Do you know?
Well, we get 2.5 million a month.
Oh, I thought you said 2.5 million, like that's how many you have so far.
No.
2.5 million comments a month.
Yeah. Oh, yes, you thought since day one.
Well, I don't know. It still sounded like a lot to me.
No, this has really been at the heart of our growth. This very, very dedicated community that likes to come, not just to come and consume news, but share news and participate and pass it on and email it or Facebook it. The other thing that is a larger point is that self-expression has become the new entertainment. And you know, in the past, nobody asked, why are people sitting down on their couches watching bad TV for 7 hours? Did anybody ask that question? No. But a lot of people now are asking the question, why are people blogging for free? Why are people updating their Facebook entries for free or editing Wikipedia entries for free? The reason is that this is self-expression, which is becoming a more and more dominant way of people's entertainment.
And have you found that your job then is, let me put this another way, have you had people who've come and wanted to self-express, who you've said, sorry, you're not good enough to self-express here on the Huffington Post? And how do you tell them that if you have to?
I don't do it myself.
You have to keep yourself above the rejection letter.
We have a great group of editors whose job it is to what we call evaluate all the submissions that come in, thousands of submissions. And it is up to them to decide whether somebody is going to be given the keys to the car, like you have, John, which means basically that we trust you to blog anytime and immediately appear on the site, or whether they're going to be given a lower training wheels, where we're going to be checking what you're doing, or whether they're just going to be told, no, this is not for us.
Now, there's a personal view of mine about all publications is that they succeed because they have voice and they have a point of view. And I think it's fair to say that you have both, and an accent, too.
And an accent. That's very important online.
To have an accent.
Yes. I think it's the key to our success.
So
actually, Henry Kissinger said that to me when I moved from England in 1980. And
Henry Kissinger?
Yes, he said to me, somebody with an accent, he said to me, you're about to discover the incredible value in America of complete and total incomprehensibility.
You too can be Secretary of State. So that point of view is not without controversy. I think, particularly given the roots of the Huffington Post in politics, and I think in your own outrage about the status quo in the United States when it came to politics. And you're sort of forging a distinct view from the traditional right, left, black, white, Republican, Democrat approach. How has that morphed to the point now where you have a point of view and a voice that expands well beyond just politics? Is it consistent, or can you describe it as similar to the origin?
One of the things that has become like part of the DNA of the Huffington Post is challenging this way of looking at American politics, the sort of left-right way of looking at American politics. We believe editorially that this is a completely obsolete and distorting way of looking at what's happening. And if you take issue after issue, if you take, for example, the oil spill, there is no right-wing and left-wing way of looking at it. In fact, you have a lot of the governors from the surrounding states who are complaining that there isn't enough government intervention. The same people who are, like Governor Jindal, remember?
Yeah.
Who was always going on about it.
He didn't want to take the money from...
because it was coming from Washington. And now he's complaining that Barack Obama has not been sufficiently intervening and is allowing, listen to that, a private corporation to determine what's happening. And I say that because this is really across the board. You take Afghanistan. When George Will came out against escalating in Afghanistan, we splashed it on our homepage, and the tagline was "Beyond Left and Right. George Will opposes escalation." Traditionally, mainstream media would see that as a left-wing position. You're opposed to Afghanistan, therefore you're a lefty, or even, God forbid, a peacenik. Well, the truth is no. There are many conservatives. There is the Cato Institute, a libertarian institution, opposed to escalating a war that they believe, and we believe at the Huffington Post, is unnecessary and against our national security interests. So let me just give you one more example because it's so much in the news, and that's the financial crisis. We have many conservative friends, many of them we share, including our investor.
Oh, he's conservative?
Fred Harman, exactly, who sends me regular emails about what's happening on Wall Street, and his views, like the views of many conservatives, are that what we have right now is not a private enterprise capitalist system, it's oligarchy. It's socialized losses and privatized gains. So again, to look at it as a left-right divide is completely distorting reality, and I feel that's where we have really a value added, because people can come to us and look at politics from this very fresh point of view. We have been very critical of Barack Obama. We're by no means cheerleaders. We have been critical of a status quo that is broken, no matter who is running it.
It seems that, and I hate to use the word the press, but I will. I guess that what you might call the traditional press, the Sunday morning talk show to the CNN 24-hour cycle press, they love the idea of a new approach to politics, but they seem only capable of attaching themselves to one of those new approaches. And so right now, the one that is caught their fancy is the Tea Party movement, as it's called. You can't say Tea Party without movement, because apparently it's a movement. So I didn't mean it that way. But what do you make of the Tea Party movement?
Well, I am actually less cynical than you appear to be about it. I'll tell you why. Because I think that at the heart of the Tea Party movement, if you scratch the surface, is a very legitimate anger at the unfairness in our system, at the fact that the fix is in and the game is rigged, and that if you are a member of the American middle class, you're in trouble. And I just finished a book, actually, called Third World America, which looks at the decline of the middle class, and it's really staggering what's happening. If you look at the fact that at the heart of the American dream has been upward mobility, that we're going to work hard and our children will do better than we will, that dream is shattered. And if you look at the demographics of the Tea Party movement, a lot of them are more affluent. And
Right.
even if
I found that surprising.
Yeah, wasn't that surprising? So, and even if they still have their jobs and their homes, they have neighbors and relatives who've lost their jobs or their homes and can't get another job. And when you have 26 million people out of work or underemployed or too discouraged to look, and 3 million foreclosures expected this year, and 120,000 families declaring bankruptcy every month, there is a real problem here. And that fear of economic uncertainty is fueling the Tea Party movement. And whenever there is that fear of economic anxiety, historically, you look for scapegoats. So they may talk about immigrants, or they may talk about Barack Obama being a socialist. But when you ask the second or third question, look at the data, what you get is anger at the bailout. And I share that anger at the bailout. We bailed out Wall Street with no strings attached loans, and we did not save Main Street. So this is really, I think, what politicians who want to survive need to address, and we're having more and more incumbents who are not going to survive.
Don't you think, however, that often our politics veers towards responding, as you put it, to the first kind of level as opposed to the second or third question? And therefore the debate is sort of limited to some of these issues which are, third rail, that immigration, for example, and they play to that gallery as opposed to really getting to the hard work, which is dealing with some of the policy issues. So there appears to be some real contradiction in some of the Tea Party movement, manifestos. On the one hand, government is bad and evil until such time as we need government to go fix the bad, evil companies and do some more regulation. But regulations are bad until such time as we need them.
But that's why this is really a teachable moment for leadership. This is really the moment where leaders, including our president, should come forward and define a new relationship between government and the people, where regulations, first of all, mean nothing if they're full of loopholes, as we've seen, in the mining disaster,
Right.
in Wall Street, they had regulators living at Lehman Brothers.
Right.
They had regulators living with Fannie and Freddie. The problem is not having regulations. The problem is, are they full of loopholes? This week, you are watching this happening in Washington as the financial reform bill has moved into conference, and thousands of lobbyists have descended to make sure there is enough yeast, which means enough loopholes,
Do
that
they
can
really
get
call it
away with
yeast?
anything. No, I call it yeast.
You call it yeast.
It's the only thing that makes legislation rise. It's loopholes.
Yeast. I like that.
Sounds better when you say it.
No, I think it sounds better when you say it. So this gets to journalism again, and a journalist's, greatest calling, at least when I was in journalism school, was to somehow call out these kinds of things and to see a response that changes, how the world works, changes how the system works, right? And we've seen, Tim Armstrong was here earlier talking about how his reporters in health and religion have won awards and done this kind of thing, and how he hopes to do it locally with Patch and Seed. Is this what you see as part of the mission of the Huffington Post?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we are really very lucky to have an amazing group of young reporters who are constantly advancing the stories that they're covering. Our Gulf coverage has gotten great commendations. And again, we always look at what is not being covered. Like at the beginning, on one of our editorial calls, I said, what's happening to the 11 families, the 11 workers who died?
Rig?
Yes.
Yeah.
Remember, it took a while before we started hearing about them. We did a big story on them. We did a slideshow. Now you're seeing a lot more about them.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
it's all over the
It's all
network
over-
news
yeah.
now. Yeah.
So we are always looking for what is not being covered, and we go there. And then we stay on that story. This is also one of the great virtues of the internet, that you can actually keep on a story again and again and again and developing it, so that you can hope to have an impact because of perseverance as well as breaking news.
When I listen to you, I think, well, wow, that strikes me as one of the things that, again, some of our colleagues in what you might call traditional journalism, like Arthur Sulzberger, who was here yesterday afternoon, would say, well, the Huffington Post is great, but they're not doing a lot of original journalism. That's our job. We do that. But those guys, they have blogging platforms and a lot of opinion and a lot of lifestyle coverage, but they're not doing journalism the way we do journalism. They're not, as Arthur put it, building berms around, to protect their compound of New York Times journalists in Bagram. Would you say that in 5 years or 10 years or 2 years, you're going to be building berms around compounds in Bagram or wherever we happen to be fighting a war?
I think there are many different ways to get news from Bagram. And one of them is through the kind of citizen journalism that we have really cultivated. And going back to 2008 and our coverage of the election through Off the Bus, which was a citizen journalism project. We had 13,000 journalists, including Mayhill Fowler, who broke 2 of the big stories of the campaign.
That's right.
And what is interesting, and I was recently on a panel with Bill Keller, the editor of the Times, and there is a real convergence. For example, we have more and more reporters, and they invest kind of fund. And they, when the subway terrorist attack happened in the Soviet Union, in Russia, they actually put out an alert to their readers there to send them stories. When the Iran uprising happened a year ago, the New York Times and the Huffington Post actually had the best live blogging happening. Nico Pitney, our national editor, did a phenomenal job, and so did their local reporter, actually,
Right.
their editor from New York, covering what was happening by basically curating all the different feeds, the Twitter feeds, the videos, the uploaded photographs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what excites me, that convergence.
Speaking of building berms, are you ever going to put a paywall around the Huffington Post the way that Mr. Murdoch and Mr. Sulzberger have decided to do in various ways?
There is one thing that I can tell you categorically, and that is absolutely not.
You will never do that.
We will never do that.
All right.
And Greg is applauding.
And Greg over there is now starting to sweat.
No, he applauds. He agrees completely. This is, it depends really on how you see the future. And we clearly see the future as the linked economy. And when you see the future as the linked economy, you don't put paywalls behind content because consumer habits have dramatically changed. And look at even the New York Times. The way they're doing it is in such a gingerly fashion. They're really recognizing that this may be an ideological decision, but it's a bad business decision.
Right.
So there's so much we can do to increase engagement. I mean, what we're doing with social media, with Facebook, with our Twitter editions,
right,
is basically the way we see the future. And deep partnerships with AOL, with Yahoo, with multiple content providers or media companies. That's how we see it. The other thing that is incredibly important is you and I were talking backstage about the fact that the most emailed story yesterday was the story on the front page of the New York Times about how all our devices are distracting us. I feel there is a huge interest in how do we learn to live with our devices without being dominated by them. And our living section has been taking the lead on this. We've been running unplug and recharge campaigns. We did a campaign together with Glamour. Cindy Levy of Glamour and I did a campaign that we call Sleep Your Way to the Top, literally, ending sleep deprivation. Because, if you think of it, the one thing that we're really missing in our decisions, whether it's in politics or in life, is wisdom. And part of it is that everybody's so exhausted and so hyper-connected that there is no time to really connect with ourselves and our own wisdom. So if you look ahead at what the trends are, I think going in that direction and providing ways for people to disconnect, even through technology, using technology to ultimately disconnect from it,
right,
is going to be a great future trend.
Now this puts you, with that decision, very squarely in the business model of marketing and figuring out ways to integrate marketers' messages in a consistent and valuable way into your product and to your readership. How's that going? Are you profitable yet? Are you willing to talk about that? And what do you see in the future there?
It's going great. And I have to say that partly it's going great because of Greg. There's nothing like leadership. In the end, we can talk about the best technologies, we can talk about everything, but having the right people in place, as you know, is invaluable. And Greg has built a terrific team all around the country. And our advertising is touch good, because I'm a superstitious Greek peasant.
You're superstitious and Greek.
Is doing incredibly well. We are right now profitable.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. And we have a lot of plans. I mean, in fact, Greg, can they hear you? You should stand up and say a little more about it. But basically, our plans are to very much include social media in advertising, always keeping the church and state divisions. But as you know, and we have the very people here making the decisions, you want your audiences to be engaged. You don't want just to do the traditional banner ads and go away. Staying engaged, provided there is complete transparency,
Of course.
is the way of the future.
I'm a fan of that. Now, let me ask you, and not to throw you off, but that's a bit of a I'm giving you a tip here. When you're purchased by Yahoo, will you stay an independent brand?
Actually, I just came from a panel with Jimmy Pitaro, who is, as you know, runs news media at Yahoo. And
you didn't seal a deal in the back
and he and I gave each other a huge hug that was photographed and will be maybe on the new brochure, right, of the new company. We have a great relationship with Yahoo. Greg used to run sales for Yahoo. Our CEO, Eric Hippo, is on the board of Yahoo. We have strategic partnerships from news to women's lifestyles, which is going to be the new area that we are going into a deeper partnership with their site Shine. But that's all that we're talking about.
On the other hand, you did take a check from a large investment fund, and they're expecting some kind of an exit at some point.
They are incredibly patient. In fact, the gentleman you are mentioning that you got a check from too, and yours was bigger. The gentleman is very happy, and he is very reluctant to contemplate any discussions of sales, because we really believe in where we are going, and we believe that since nobody is in a hurry, everybody loves what we're doing, whether down the road we ever sell or not, I will be doing exactly the same thing. This is my last incarnation. I have had many, and there's nothing I have loved more, and there's nothing else I want to do. So why sell?
All right. Well, I could come up with a couple of reasons, but...
Do they have 7 figures on them or 8 figures?
We're close to running out of time, and I know you have a very tight schedule, so I want to give the audience a chance to ask you some questions. So if anyone has questions for Arianna, please. Over here, we've got a question right away, up here.
Arianna, I wondered if you could comment on the Helen Thomas incident. Is that a function of speaking truth to power?
No, that was really unfortunate. And as you know, Helen Thomas herself apologized. To say that Jews should leave where their home is and go back to Europe was really deeply unfortunate. And it's a sad ending to her career, but you know, we're all responsible for what we say, and that was not speaking truth to power.
Yeah, I think that publishers today, and a lot of the newer publishers such as yourself, have an opportunity to really engage with their readership and their audience, and you talk about the social impact of that and how important it is to you guys and your brand. You announced some recent sort of like a badge economy or a badge system for your readers. Foursquare announced something similar today with CNN. Do you have a plan that goes on beyond what they are today, or is that something that's very important to you? Just see if you could comment on that.
It's very important to us. Actually, from day one, our commenters were very important to us. Even when we had very limited resources, we hired human comment moderators to make sure, as I said earlier, that we had a civil environment in which all these discussions took place. Right now, the goal is to bring our commenters into the moderating process, and that's part of the awarding of badges, and also into the blogging process. We want our commenters to become moderators and to become bloggers and to become a deeper and deeper part of our community. So we have a great CTO, Paul Berry, and he's working with our community managers, developing this and listening to the feedback that we're getting as we're developing it.
Is that a question up here?
Hi, can you talk a little bit about your approach to linking to other people's content? Like if the Huffington Post links to an entire article from a different site, what is that site getting from that?
Oh yes, we are very strict in following fair use rules. What that means is that either we're linking outright to a story, which means that they get the traffic, or we are exempting no more than a paragraph or a paragraph and a half from the story and then linking to the story. So the rules are very strictly followed. Our editors get regular refresher courses about how to link out. And increasingly, we are producing our own content. And some of it comes from bloggers, and some of it comes from our own reporters.
You know, I've heard a lot of pitches. I guess because I've started media companies, I get a lot of people coming to my office and saying, here's my publishing idea. And they say, we're going to be the Huffington Post of ... You know, business, or the Huffington Post of lifestyle, the Huffington Post of, you know, Lord knows, you know, quilting. And they want to take that model and your model and apply it to a segment. Do you just want to be the Huffington Post of everything? Is that your general goal?
Actually, I really want to be the Huffington Post of quilting. You gave me an idea now. We keep adding sections. We just are about to add travel, which Greg particularly requested. We are adding arts in a week. This week, this year alone, we added tech and college and impact, which is one of my absolute favorites because it's the whole section on giving back. Mm-hmm. So that basically you are reading about the Gulf. If you go to impact, it can tell you a dozen things you can also do about the Gulf instead of just being angry about it. And we also have, we are profiling people who are going through hard times. The latest story, if you go there, is Brenda Carter, who was fired as an IT manager after 13 years in the same job, has not been able to get another job, has started making cookies and selling them. We profiled her, we started a PayPal account for her, and you should see her emails. She said, I feel as though I have a job again. I have hundreds of praline cookie orders. And so that's really, for me, another big part of what we need to look at. You know, how do you engage audiences in a way that they become more empathetic? And that means that it's good for their lives and it's good for us because it creates that synergistic relationship.
Right. Oh, we got a question here. Matt?
Hi. I've heard on several occasions that the editors of Huffington Post have become real experts with optimizing the homepage for lots and lots of activity, spurring people on to clicking on lots of different content. And I'm wondering, things like, I've heard that you will write several titles, several leads for every single article and then optimize against that. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about those kinds of tactical things that you do on the homepage.
Yes, we're calling it A/B testing. So we can test different headlines and see which headline our readers respond to most. Incidentally, this is very classic journalism. I mean, I've been in front page meetings in newspapers when they will really try things out. Do you think that headline works, or do you think that headline works? So there is nothing really stunningly new here. The difference is that because of the technology, we can test it with hundreds or thousands of people, as opposed to only testing it with the 20 people in the room.
It's definitely one of the themes of this conference, which I find fascinating as it developed, which is that a lot of the content creators, be it Tim with Patch and Seed or Yahoo with associated content or demand, are starting to apply some of the traditional marketing tactics of A/B testing and constant iteration and creative tests and so on, experimentation, to content. And I think that there was this sense that somehow that was just wrong. But in fact, it seems that it's all about seeing what the reader and the consumer of that content is interested in.
And not only is it not wrong, it's completely traditional. It's within the traditions of journalism, adapted to the new technologies.
Hi, the 2.5 million comments a month really are showing how engaged the audience is with the content that's being filtered through the site. Are there any plans to really mobilize the folks that are commenting around certain causes as a way to not really end the conversation there? Maybe they're really passionate about a certain cause, and they would, benefit from, getting together with others that are also really passionate to kind of, make a difference?
Well, first of all, our bloggers can mobilize our readers around their causes. The impact section can mobilize and has mobilized our readers around Haiti, around the Gulf, around major disasters, as well as around individual stories. Like the first story was a family that, because of healthcare expenses, had ended up in a tragic situation without giving you all the details. We raised over $40,000 for them in 1 week. At the same time, we launched a big campaign, I don't know if you've seen it, called Move Your Money, where we basically partnered with an institutional risk analytics firm, and you could put your zip code on the site called moveyourmoney.info and find out the local community banks and the local credit unions where you could move your money if you wanted to support a bank that was also reinvesting in the community, creating jobs, and also be with a bank that maybe gave you better service. It happened that on the day when we launched that campaign, Greg had gotten a big
Well, you closed a deal with Chase or
had
something?
just closed the deal, and in fact, a big campaign was coming that same day from Bank of America. So it was perfect synergy, right, Greg?
That was a phone call that was a happy one, I'm sure, Greg.
But they stayed, they didn't pull out. So that's part of what we can do. But we also need to keep a line between journalism and activism. And we're very careful at not crossing that line either.
Back here.
Arianna, given that you mentioned, right back here, that you'll always remain free, how do you measure yourself against other news outlets? Whereas a New York Times will measure themselves based on subscriptions, or a CNN could use the website and combine with television ratings. How do you kind of internally say, aside from the revenue that's generated, are we stacking up against the competition and meeting whatever your metrics may be? And what are those?
Well, actually, the metrics are online. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all the news sites that you could see, say, on Comscore or Nielsen, are going by their traffic numbers, by their monthly traffic numbers. And right now, HuffPost is ahead of the Wall Street Journal and USA Today and Washington Post and behind the New York Times.
Not that you're paying attention.
No, never.
I think we have to keep you on schedule, Arianna, unfortunately. It's been a joy to have you here. Thank you very much for coming and helping us close
Thank
the
you
sale
very
summit.
much. Thank you.